This conference will now be recorded.
Okay. Because we want to record this. And Josh, so you don't actually you do not have a presentation, a real presentation, because normally we share the presentation after the calls.
Yeah. No, this isn't
Uh,
I can't. I actually, a lot of these files, I can't actually share them. They're some of the fiber maps are national. They're under NDA. I can't do that.
Yeah. No, it's fine. It's fine. But of course, as we said, this call will be recorded. So
Which is totally fine. Yep.
okay, everything that you say will be for the future generations.
Yeah. I just don't do normal presentations. We
Yeah.
have like PDFs we send around from the company and stuff like that, but I hate them. So
Yeah.
I've
Don,
actually
good
done
morning.
presentations in front of a couple thousand people with nothing but pictures, and then build up to a climax. But everybody pays attention. They don't have to read anything. It changes it.
I agree.
Hey, Josh.
Hello.
Quick shout out. I'm sorry it's late, but looking forward to the presentation and discussion. I've always been impressed with what you're doing there in Maryland.
Cool. Glad to share. Hopefully it's opened some eyes here.
All right, so people are slowly joining. Let's still wait a couple of minutes. There's not. In the meantime, let me reshare because no, I'll reshare. I'll reshare later. So the problem, another shortcoming, let's say, of GoToMeeting is that if I put something in the chat box and you join the call later, you actually don't see it. So I will wait. I will wait for a few minutes because normally we share the links to our group where we have the Leaky Week. Sorry, it's not the Leaky Week. Sorry, the wiki page. The wiki
Cosimo,
page with yes.
perhaps while we wait for a couple other people to join in, you'd like to share some observations from the OCP Summit. I think you were there, and I would love to hear your perspectives, key takeaways.
I think so. It was only my second one. Let me put it this way. So I don't have a lot of past experience, but it was really, really great. Really, really great. A lot of people, really a lot of people, and a lot of quality people, a lot of very high quality presentations and chances to actually meet with the presenters and continue the conversation. I think it was great. I don't know. I'm sure other people here participated, but so they have their own perspective. But it was excellent.
Hey, Cosmo, I'd like to jump in on a couple things. One thing I think attendance was reported being like 3,500 people. And then the following week, last week, I was down at 7 by 24. And at 7 by 24, there were two events that focused on Open Compute Project. And one of the key things we're seeing at Open Compute Project is a transition, or the effect of a transition, from a rack-based organization that was looking back when it was founded. It was primarily the IT footprint associated with an IT rack. And we are expanding that to the footprint associated with the entire data center and to a certain extent beyond, the heat reuse. And to do that, we need to expand our community. The community that's associated with people that design and put things inside IT racks is different than the ones that design call it a sustainable hyperscale data center ecosystem, which is a term that we're using more and more. And in addition to what we see here with Quantum Loophole, we also have organizations like the Wyoming Hyperscale White Box. And the outcome to me is we actively need to recruit, and we are actually gaining interest in a lot of data center designers. And that's where OCP needs to grow, both to help with the ecosystem discussion we have today. And we love the participation, and I really appreciate getting Quantum Loophole's participation in this. And maybe sometime going out and making a Quantum Loophole presentation similar to the community, the way we've been doing Wyoming Hyperscale White Box, because it is a community member and has been very actively contributing its best practices as you go along. So, Cosimo, I didn't mean to take over the podium. I just wanted to figure I'd fill some slots while we climbed up our attendance. One other thing we're also doing is we keep, we're trying to refine our invite process. And I had actually invited a lot of people in the past, and we're going to try to transition to use our mail list more consistently so we're not spamming people. To that extent, you do want to go to the OCP Cooling Environments webpage and enroll in the sub-projects of interest. This is one sub-project, heat reuse, but closely related to this sub-project is a sub-project on immersion cooling, and another sub-project on cold plate, and another sub-project on heat reuse. Door heat exchangers, and then one on advanced cooling facilities, which is how we all plug them together. Each of those sub-projects has different time slots to present and discuss. You don't have to attend them all, but you do want to enroll in each of their mail lists if you want to see the content associated with that, or see any when they're having presentations. Cosimo, I'll hand it back to you. Sorry for the interruption, but I think we're ready to start.
No, it's always welcome. Okay, guys, so I think we're ready to start. Of course, this is the heat reuse group. Today we have Josh from Quantum Loophole. Thank you very much for your availability. I know that you are sick on top of that, so we really appreciate your time. And this is the first call after a hiatus of 1 month. So, and on top of that, of course, it's a holiday in Europe. So I apologize for that. I didn't want to reschedule, but probably a lot of people from you that normally join from Europe will not be present in this call. As usual, if you have questions during the presentation, you are more than welcome. It's more a conversation than a presentation, and you can either ask them unmuting yourself. First of all, I ask yourself to mute all your microphones if you can, so we don't have background noise. But if you have questions, please unmute yourself, and or you can write them in the chat box. With that being said, and with no further ado, Josh, the podium is yours.
Thanks, Cosimo, and everybody. Thanks for having me here. As Cosimo said, I'm just coming out of the flu. Everybody thought COVID was bad. I just lost 14 pounds in a week. So I think COVID might have been better than the flu. Anyway, here I am. You guys are the only meeting I haven't canceled this week. So it shows you how much gratitude I'm showing towards you. I'm the founder and CEO of Quantum Loophole. For those of you who don't know me, Josh Snowhorn. I've been in this industry for around 24 years. Building out retrofitting telecom hotels in the late 90s. Then I joined Terramark as employee number 6. I ran the telecom and interconnection business there and stayed there for 11 years and then a year under the Verizon umbrella. Then I joined Cincinnati Bell and was part of the executive team that spun out CyrusOne. I ran the interconnection portfolio there as well. Stayed there for about 6.5 years. Was involved in Edge Micro, which unfortunately doesn't exist anymore. And about 3 years ago, or just over 3 years ago, I founded Quantum Loophole. I'm actually going to present what Quantum Loophole is, and then some ideas and thoughts that we have that we're going to try and utilize around heat reuse. It's a unique project in its scale, so the opportunity is really quite dramatic. I would ask all of you to please ask me questions as I go along. I'm a little bit out of it from having the flu, but please stop me, and it won't interfere in how my thought processes are going to present. I'd love to have an open dialogue. I'm actually here to not present some Oracle level kind of scenario like we know exactly what we're doing. And a lot of this, because we have this open palette, we're looking for advice from folks. So anybody who wants to give input, please do. For those of you who don't know what Quantum Loophole does, we have the largest data center campus in the world at the moment. I'm sure somebody's going to try and do something bigger, but so will we somewhere else, so that's okay. This is 2,164 acres of data center campus. 1,500 acres of that is zoned as general industrial. The site itself is actually a former Alcoa aluminum smelter, and I'm going to go ahead and turn on time lapse and show you what this used to look like. The property is located just 20 miles as the crow flies north of Equinix Ashburn. So we're very, very close to the center of the internet ecosystem as it exists today. That's the big fat yellow line that'll describe it. And I'll go in some detail on a lot of the lines you're going to see here that are on this map. So what Alcoa did is they took this site with all of its power and entitlement, decided they weren't going to smelt aluminum anymore. They mitigated the site until it looks like this today. It's essentially farmland, mostly around it, and then some industrial in the middle. So what we've done is we're doing really several things. What we do as a business is sell land that's to multi-tenant data center providers, hyperscalers, government entities, enterprises, or anybody along those lines. We will build powered shells, particularly in what's called the environmental management area in the middle of the property. That's where you had waste materials from the smelting process. That includes cyanide and fluoride and other not such nice things. It's been environmentally mitigated. There's no further action from the EPA, but it still has some hair on it right in the middle of the property. So that's where we would do something like that. But turnkey data centers itself is actually done by others. So we're not in the business of 24/7 operation. Even though my team is extraordinarily experienced, it's not what we do for a living. Power is a huge factor in what we're doing on the property. Today we have a 2.4 gigawatt detailed load study on the campus. That means that we have 2.4 gigawatts of available power from the grid coming onto the campus. That power is from First Energy, which is our transmission provider. We are not on Dominion's power systems. So that's purely our grid scale power. Where that power comes from, obviously, is a variety of resources. First Energy has 24,000 miles of transmission line capacity, but they only have 3,000 megawatts of production. So they're really a transmission provider, not a production provider. So your kilowatts could be from solar, wind, coal, gas. It's really up to our clients to go and purchase that from the utilities and decide what they want to get on the transmission scale side. But the scale of our campus allows us a big opportunity to work on renewables, including critical power as a service. Think about things like hydrogen electrolyzers on the site and delivering hydrogen to our parcels on the campus, so that they can, instead of using diesel for backup, but maybe burn hydrogen. Long duration battery storage, like 100-hour type battery farms. Potential of partnerships with gas providers, and we are very much, as of yesterday, an applicant with a consortium for one of the hydrogen hubs. Given that we can go at gigawatt scales of use, we think that will be a great opportunity around that. The fiber ring that we're building between our campus and the Ashburn ecosystem to the south is the largest ever constructed. I'll show you that in detail in a second. It's a 43-mile ring. That is no big feat in its length, but we are going under the Potomac River twice. We're 91 feet below the Potomac River on our first boring, so 9 stories down below the bedrock. And we have 34 2-inch ducts, the capacity for 235,000 strands of fiber to link our campus to the ecosystem to the south. And water in a centralized district cooling plant. And this is really going to be a little bit appropriate to the discussion today. We have 7 million gallons of gray water that runs by the campus on a daily basis that goes in the Potomac River from the city of Frederick to the north. I'm sorry, it's 5 million gallons, but ramping up to 7 million gallons and eventually 12 million gallons. That cooling water allows us to take gray water and reuse it for cooling and potentially in a centralized district cooling plant. Our goals in all of this is to create something of a circular economy, not just around land, energy, fiber, and water, but also ESG, long duration storage, goals and targets, reducing emissions, removing diesel completely, potentially removing backup completely. There's really a wide variety of things that we can do on the campus. But let me back out the map here, quickly show you the fiber and give you an idea of what we're building into. Anything you see on the squares is our fiber ring. You can see our first boring hole is just south of Potomac River. We did a 12-inch pilot hole. We are now back reaming that to 24 inches and then eventually 36 inches. That will allow us to pull in these sleeves. This is actually our laydown in Maryland right now, and I can zoom in a little bit on that. So this is 24-inch internal HDPE. That's really essentially what you'd use normally in a gas pipeline, running along transmission line right-of-ways. And then that will be pulled through the holes, and then inside of that, we'll be putting in 34 2-inch ducts. This is designed to hold 69 12 fiber trunks. So as I said, 235,000 strands of fiber capacity. Just a quick summary of that build. It heads north. It goes through the former Dickerson power plant, which is a former coal plant that's retired and going to be torn down. That has just recently been purchased by a company called Terra Innovations. I believe they're doing some long duration battery storage and other things on the site, and some peaker plant stuff around natural gas. You can see our second crossing here, and then that pulls it up to north up to our campus, and then where we terminate on the site. Power comes in from the Dobbs transmission substation to the south. We have dual 230 kV paths coming into the site, and something of a ring bus architecture as it goes around the campus area. Again, we are not Dominion, so we have massive power on site. So here's where the campus gets very interesting. We've sold these parcels here to Align Data Centers. This one is under contract, this parcel is under contract, and this one is under contract to a provider to the DoD. Everything you see in purple is what we call our green space, and it's actually is a finger going around here. We designed this to be very carefully touch every single parcel on the campus in some way, shape, or form, allowing us to distribute energy services, water services, and to potentially take waste resources, in particular around heat, and be able to reutilize that. So some ideas we have obviously are around absorption chillers. That's the bit of the low hanging fruit, although, excuse me, it's a good flu cough. Expensive up front, but still a great potential for us. That would mean that the companies who are taking data center space or land from us are interested in utilizing that shared service. So we wouldn't develop it on a whim. We'd have to really get a buy-in from everybody to spend the kind of dollars to make that work. We've also explored, by the way, I've already kind of related that we'll be at 2.4 gigawatts on transmission power. I do want to relate this in square footage. There is the potential to do up to from anywhere between 14 and 28 million square feet of data center space on the campus. That massive number is related to our entitlement and zoning. At one story, we could do 14 million if people build 2 stories, because we can do 60 feet of clear building height per our general industrial zoning. We could do up to 28 million square feet. Obviously, that's going to generate a massive amount of waste heat. So if we can keep it circular, I think that'd be tremendous. We also look at it from an agricultural perspective. You have a huge agricultural community in the region, but obviously very seasonal. They're growing in beautiful fields. If I even turn off this diagram, you can see, and kind of turn on time lapse today, you can see this is just all farm fields around on our campus. We actually have a farmer who leases the land from us right now until it's used for data centers. So, but obviously it's all going to be converted, but everything around us could potentially be greenhouses and other things with a massive amount of waste heat that we'll be able to produce. Another thing that we're focused on adjacent to the campus is a site that's owned by Argos, which is a large cement provider or producer. The mine is actually excavated by Vulcan Materials Supply, and there's a lot of heat needed in the cement process. We're also even utilizing, we have some landfills on the site that have pot linings from the smelting process for aluminum. That second lining that's in these landfills is actually utilizable for cement, so we think we'll be able to capture that and maybe take some of our waste heat and sort of call it donate it to the cement production process next door. Given that we need enough cement to build up to 28 million square feet of data center space, I imagine this pit is going to get much bigger, and you're going to have a lot of production facilities right next door. They own all of this land adjacent to our facility. When we look at the site in general, turning off time lapse again and seeing that we're next to the city of Frederick, there is the potential to pipe in waste heat up to the city, but you're talking something that's extremely seasonal. We're not in an extreme Nordic region. The year-round need for heat is not really prevalent up here, so I think that'd be an adjunct use and benefit that might have potential in the future. One of the big things that we're working on, as I said earlier, is becoming a hydrogen hub and utilizing the 26-inch firm gas pipeline. This is the Eastern Regional Transmission Pipeline that feeds all of the Eastern Seaboard's power systems. Or gas turbine plants and things like that. This area below us will eventually turn into a hydrogen hub, we believe, because of our power use demands and potentially power use demands to the south, and there'll be all kinds of heat reuse scenarios around that as well. When we talk about power and what's feeding our site today, traditional power systems are coming off of coal and natural gas turbines and things like that. We do not see turbines as being something that's going to be reasonably utilizable in the area. More from a community perspective, people don't really like to have these big giant smokestacks and things next door to them. It's not very visually appealing. This particular plant, for those of you who don't know it, it looks like any blue building hydrogen plant. This is actually Longview's hydrogen plant on the Ohio River. It's an interesting site in that they took another former aluminum smelting site and reutilized it to produce a 485 megawatt turbine. It's a next gen GE turbine, and it's designed to be able to take hydrogen. However, there is no hydrogen infrastructure as exists today, so their only burn has been a 5% injection from tanker trucks. So still a long way off from the hydrogen economy. We've certainly looked at things like an electrolyzer facility that can go somewhere near the Potomac River, store it in liquefied tanks and be able to pipe that up to us to be able to burn for backup and things like that. Hydrogen produces massive heat when it burns, and it actually creates challenges. So we don't want to, while we'll have no NOx output or very minimal, mostly water vapor from burning it, the biggest problems are going to be around that heat. If we have giant plumes of heat coming off, that wouldn't be so healthy. So we have to figure out how to be able to utilize that, either for that big opportunity around absorption chillers because of the high heat, or potentially around, as I said, the greenhouse side. And we do have some large biogas facilities in the area. So initially, while we're waiting for hydrogen to come on, we're going to be working on a renewable natural gas injection of up to 15 to 20%, and maybe greater as it comes along. But it's obviously a very exciting project, and we're quite enthusiastic of what we can do for the economy in the region, and certainly for the data center economy. I'm incredibly sick right now, guys, so I'm probably babbling and rambling a little more than I really want to. I'd love to open up to questions, because I think you might find it very interesting, and I'm happy to answer anything.
Well, I'm waiting for people to ask questions. I have a question to begin with. How did this project start? Because let's start from there.
It really came from looking at the data center sector. My team and myself have built billions and billions of dollars of infrastructure. Scott Nopum, who is our CTO, who's probably known to many of you, was in charge of data centers at Apple for a number of years, then Yahoo, and then AboveNet before that. Sylvia Kang, who's in charge of our site selection, was site selection for Yahoo, and then Microsoft, and my colleague at CyrusOne, and so on and so forth throughout the team. When we looked at what we could do as a business, and as we assembled this and created Quantum Loophole, we could have easily gone out and raised billions of dollars of capital and created a rubber stamp approach, just like everybody else is doing, and gone out and built lots of data centers around the world. And we could have innovated somewhat around cooling and power and sustainability and things like that. But we felt that was a business that's rapidly commoditizing itself, more than anything because you have some very adept players in the business who have a very low cost of capital. They might be investment grade on their debt side, and they were able to they'd be able to outmaneuver us from a capital perspective. So we didn't want to do that. We wanted to do something that was innovative and unique. Land, energy, water, and fiber. So the elements of the data center business, with the things that everybody needs no matter what. And ironically, we have no competition, which is a very unusual thing to say in our industry these days. It doesn't happen. I'm sure we will. Nobody can really compete with us in Maryland. We're the largest industrial property holder in the state. So that won't change. You can't create new land really, but as we go to other markets like Dallas, Chicago, and Silicon Valley, and deploy, in some cases, 10,000 acres at a time, the opportunity is even better for us. So that's why we created it, to really have a non-competitive supply side business that's a wholesaler to the wholesalers.
So there's a question from Don. Are there any areas where legislation changes are recommended to advance sustainability objectives? Sorry.
In Maryland
I
itself,
don't
is
know
that what?
Well, yeah. So Maryland, and what we are finding is we've had these discussions around the world. Is there are places where there are, we'll call them silly little laws that make keep you from actually achieving a goal, or where maybe a minor incentive today would advance a huge success in the future. You look at solar energy 30 years ago, and a couple incentives got the industry going in the right direction, and now it really doesn't need incentives. Are there areas where legislative barriers or incentives you would be recommending that people should be pushing? As you look at, you identified a couple geographies. Maryland is one, but it sounds like you've looked at others. Anything you'd like to highlight?
Yeah, I'll actually point something out in Maryland, and I have a slide on it. Oops, give me 1 second to maneuver over to that. So Maryland passed a sales tax legislation, which is wonderful for data centers, and they didn't have this. And I'm sure all of you have seen this in commonality in some way, shape, or form in other markets. They were very good in respect that they have a very low hurdle to the number of people. They recognize data centers are not going to produce jobs. So as long as they don't artificially request, they'll produce jobs initially, but obviously operating a data center is much more automated these days. But then in the exact same, maybe 9 months later, they passed an advertising tax law, the first one in the country. It got defeated in appeals courts as being unconstitutional, but that's a little bit of schizophrenic behavior. Let's incent all the data centers to come, but let's make sure they don't come because there's an advertising tax. And not all data centers, but certainly folks who rely on advertising. So things like that are quite an issue. We're also, what we're doing and what we're focused on is more of a microgrid kind of scenario. There's the potential with Washington Gas is engineering a 36-inch pipeline to prepare for hydrogen to our campus. So as we work very hard on becoming something of a microgrid, there's rules and laws around delivery across property lines. Kind of look at it something like the old world where dealers are being protected in markets. Think how Tesla can't sell, they produce cars here in Austin. They have to ship it out of Texas, then ship it back to deliver it to you. It makes no sense. So in the case of Maryland, there's 6 utilities able to deliver or distribute power across their lines, across property lines. Getting microgrids to be able to deliver that is very difficult. And that presents a unique situation as we sell like this parcel to Aligned or these 2 parcels to data center operators. How can I deliver services across those property lines more easily? So a national focus or a market, or at least markets that really matter to our industry, that allows the delivery of microgrid services, that really changes the game, in that you're now no longer a burden to the grid. You're able to produce your own power, be it a turbine or a fuel cell or linear generator or whatever it is, or a large scale backup services across those property lines without drawing the ire of the regulatory officials. That's a big deal today, particularly in something like PJM, where you have a 5-year backlog of interconnection requests to connect into the grid with solar and wind and things, where the PJM put a freeze on it because it was making the grid too hot and they weren't able to accommodate everything. So microgrids at our scale is really a big solution to remove a bit of a black eye from the data center industry as being seen as a huge consumer of power with no benefit to the community.
The discussion on micro was also brought up with Wyoming Hyperscale White Box recently, and a similar discussion. Is heat considered a utility, the transportation of heat and supplying of heat, energy, something that has a regulation aspect to it?
I think anything delivering across property lines could. Now, we as a campus, as perspective here, this property is 3.5 square miles. So we are in the state of Maryland. We could actually qualify from our scale before we start selling off parcels as a city. My point being here is that we're building huge on-site sewage, underground power infrastructure, duct banks at city scale, and as such, we have to think ahead on all of those things. We're laying in pipelines for things we're assuming we can deliver. I think from a regulatory perspective, it all depends on which election cycle you're in, who's in office, and how they feel about it that day, or who has lobbied them, and particularly around the utility side, and makes them put the brakes on different projects. So we're hoping for more clarity, and that's something we're working towards on the microgrid side, particularly in Maryland. As we go out to Chicago, I think we'll have a lot of issues out there on the microgrid side, but we're going to work hard on it. In Texas, you can do pretty much anything, so we're not so worried. But as we get to California, we're working on assembling up to 10,000 acres in California, and we know we have CEQA approvals and all the other brutalness that goes along with deploying anything in California. But think how great microgrids would be out there. Now, there has been some progression to legislation out there, but I wouldn't call it reliable. So that's going to be a big deal for us. If with cooperation of the county, we're in Frederick County, and the state and local neighbors requesting our heat, I mean, you can imagine the amount of greenhouse year-round production for food, flowers, anything else you can imagine that could be produced around us, never stopping. No open agriculture, but giant greenhouses that are perfectly regulated because of the heat we produce. I think it'll be a tremendous opportunity. I see that as that and absorption chilling as really the two things that we can focus on.
Fantastic. I mean, it's really turning heat from a liability to an asset, right? Even politically, which is fantastic. Rob, you have a question instead of me butchering your question with my accent. You want to ask the question yourself?
Yeah, I think actually you just answered it in the last one. You listed a lot of options for being, for carbon reduction and stuff. And what were your top ones? And it sounded like the greenhouse and the absorption chillers seem to be on the top of your list of things to do.
Yeah, we would love to have zero waste heat or the ultimate efficiency. Again, it's a cost thing though. So we can't just build pipelines out everywhere and hope people are going to take them. We can't just build absorption chillers and hope that everybody's going to want to utilize that. But from a sustainability perspective, we think about it from the beginning. The land itself, which was brownfield land, is sustainable. The utilization of existing gray water, that pipeline literally runs right through our campus, and just perspective of where that goes right out to the Potomac River right here. So be able to utilize that, utilizing existing transmission lines, these transmission lines, as I zoom in here, they were literally dangling. You can actually see the power lines right here. So imagine, everybody's so desperate to get power. We found a place where the power lines were just dangling and ready to go. And, that's what the site looks like today. So we were able to tap into those. So we look at that as a big focus of sustainability.
Josh, hi, it's Chad Cape from Liquid Cool. Your website talks about bare metal as a service. I'm a little bit surprised you haven't talked much about liquid or immersion cooling. You look at a project like Facebook's Dense, where they had 176 cooling units to convert low quality rejected heat at 100 and 105 degrees Fahrenheit to something usable that they could move across the street. And I scratch my head a little bit and wonder, where's the discussion about immersion, or liquid cooling more generally, I guess, that slashes land use, slashes power consumption, because you don't have to have all these chillers and all this complex HVAC that you're talking about. I'm a bit surprised. Wyoming Hyperscale, that's what they lead with, immersion cooling. You're expressing more of a land play here, which, from a heat reuse perspective, screwing around with air-cooled data centers is kind of archaic, isn't it?
Yeah, Chad, my apologies on that. I've had the flu for a week. I'm so sick still that my brain's a little wishy-washy. So, and I did mean to mention that. Scott Noteboom, our CTO, was one of the founders of Submare, extremely focused on liquid cooling. Liquid cooling is wonderful, and be it immersion or whatever technologies come along, it represents a challenge to us more related to energy. If you tell me that I now have 28 million square feet of data center that is all liquid cooled and densified because of that, my 2.4 gigawatts of power could be 7.5 or 10 gigawatts or who knows what. So our challenge is really related to how do we get enough power to be able to make that scale in something that's a city scale infrastructure. But we're huge supporters of liquid cooling. You have to remember that we do not build the data centers ourselves. So all we're trying to do is provide that ground level infrastructure to be able to support what others are going to do. So for example, Align data centers will be building out this area. They've asked for a lot of power, and so I imagine they're going to be getting pretty creative. I don't know what their architecture is, and then we have a couple of hyperscalers and some government entities coming in that are going to be doing some pretty wild densification. The only place where we're actually building data centers ourselves directly are our network centers. These are approximately 7-acre parcels, and but they'll be done in a very modular fashion because we have to build SCIF spaces for the Department of Defense entities coming into the site, and then other carriers who want high reliability and high resiliency to be able to interconnect around the campus. But so that's the only place we're doing that.
Just a moment. I encourage everybody who has questions. There's a list of questions already in the chat, and we want to give everybody the chance to ask their questions. So let's try to respect, let's say, the order if it's possible. Michael, you have a question now, right? Michael Beatty.
Yeah, thanks, Cosmo. Josh, it's a really exciting project that you've got going on here. So very, very interesting to see. And my question's around the gray water. I'm just curious if you have envisioned or discussed with your future clients or data center owner operators how you might be using that water. Is it once through? Is it evaporative? Is it supplemental cooling? Just curious if there's any discussions or plans about that. And have you looked at any kind of rainwater recovery or reuse as part of the offering you're offering these owner operators?
And you are from NALCO, right? So when we ask the question, maybe it's helpful if we say what companies we work for.
Sure. So Michael, we from a gray water perspective, that gray water is not being utilized by anybody else today. It just, like as I said, goes into the Potomac. In theory, it's drinkable. I'm not going to try it, but the focus we're really trying to work on is closed loop systems, not evaporative. We have cycles of concentration issues that we have to deal with. So we don't want to. We can't put into the Potomac extremely mineral rich water or other things that might cause havoc to the ecosystem. So we have to maintain those same environmental standards. What we found with, in particular with the hyperscale community, we have one hyperscaler who's extremely interested in all of this land up here. It's a very large area. They want a lot of power and they want every little bit of the water that we can give them from the gray water side. It's extremely greedy. And it's interesting to me in that I would think that they would be a little more open to being creative to lower their water use. But their version of it is said, this is not a water constrained area, so we're going to use as much as we can until we need to change to a different system. So in our case, we have these millions of gallons of gray water. We know where it's going to go based on scale and population growth from the city of Frederick, based on forecasts that they've given us to the north. And we're going to allocate that equitably between our participants and try to encourage them to be efficient in what they're doing. Part of the reason we're looking at doing the centralized district cooling plant, and we're just beginning that work, we're really more focused on gigawatt scale backup power and potential hydrogen production, electrolyzers and things like that than the water side yet. But if a district cooling plant works, then you're talking about taking all those millions of gallons and then we distribute that as cooled water. We can control the cycles of concentration, we can control the efficiency, and hopefully the use of everybody, and maybe be collaborative with our clients. So we'll see where that goes.
Your own You have a question?
Yes. Hi, Josh. Thanks for taking my question. It sounds like the heat reuse part is a lot up to your tenants or participants, as you call them. Are you thinking to start any programs or initiatives to kind of incentivize them to participate and to do heat reuse?
We do, I don't think there'll be an incentive or a program. It's more of a collaborative approach. So right now, all of the four parties who have signed contracts with us don't know who the other one is, or at least I don't think they do. So it's that there isn't any co-opetition going on right now. We have a lot of individual parties very keen to get their data centers up and running. They're multi-tenant providers or hyperscaler support providers, wholesalers in these three sides. The DoD guys aren't going to cooperate with anybody because that's what DoD guys do. So this is all going to be government facilities and probably expanding out a lot down here. So but once everybody's closed on their property, as Aligned has done, they actually own this, so I can publicly talk about it. We're going to try and create that openness. One thing we have created on the campus is a property owners association, and I do think that with a commonality of a goal for managing, green space and things like that, I do think we'll start to get some co-opetition happening. Well, they'll be open to it. One thing though is that because they do own their land fee simple, we can't force anybody to do anything. It's a situation where we can ask people to do heat reuse. We can ask them to, if instead of if they aren't putting anything in for recycling it, if they'll donate it to a pipeline system we plan to build to be able to give it to farmers for greenhouse, things like that, but we can't force it. So we can just hope they will.
Well, let me add a comment here. No, of course you cannot force, but I mean, you are creating a fantastic environment. You are creating what we have been preaching is needed. So a contest, a box where to make this possible. And the comment that you just made that they don't know each other, whether it's actually they actually don't know each other or not, it's irrelevant. Poses a challenge though, because most of these heat reuse projects or any coordination, of course, it needs to be implemented in the design phase. If you retrofit a design that has not been designed away, it's going to be more expensive and challenging. So have you thought about maybe promoting this kind of collaboration? Say, so let's start first of all opening up who you are to the other tenants or owners, or I don't know how you call them, and see if we can work together, create like a collaborative environment.
Yeah, they're all under NDA. It's pretty tough for us to get it to make it happen right now. We're doing that work though in this blue space. So where you're going to have underground transmission scale power delivery for microgrid, for battery services. We're putting an underground pipeline for delivery of electrolyzed hydrogen at a very large scale, stored. It's liquefied and stored underground in those pipelines to allow people to, again, move away from diesel and burn hydrogen. And in part of that, we have, up to 70 conduits of underground fiber interconnecting everything. And there's sewage, there's potable and non-potable water systems going around the entire campus, huge sewage systems. Our sewage lift station is actually 5 stories down, and a gigantic lift station to be able to support all of the well, not that there's a huge amount of sewage water coming out of data centers, but still massive systems. So we're putting those things in place as much as we can. What we don't want to have to go do is go back in and dig later. So there's probably $100 million of infrastructure going on the ground. It actually started just last month. So we're already starting the mass grading and trenching process.
So continuing with the question, Brian, you have a question?
Thanks, Cosmo. Hey, Josh, Brian Hatmaker. Hey, I wanted to say I'm really still very excited about the project as a long-term Frederick County resident. I'm a big supporter of this development, as you know, and I just was curious. You talk about having 5 million gallons of gray water day one from your municipal source with Frederick City, scaling up to 12 million-ish gallons at the end of the project. Do you envision any challenges getting to that 12 million? The reason I ask is, you talked about that hyperscaler that has designs on that orange quadrant there, and they'll take whatever they can get. Do you, if someone's going to make that type of a long-term commitment to design utilizing gray water, I'm just curious if they said to you tomorrow, I need 12 million, could you get it?
No, we can't. That's based on population growth. So, and I'm glad that you're excited about the project. We've really loved all the residents within Frederick. So it's good to have supporters there. We certainly have some that are not. That's always hard, as I'm sure you've seen in the press. But we've done pretty well with it.
I'm working on them, Josh.
Thank you. I appreciate that. It's pretty funny. We are too. We go day by day. We knock on doors, particularly around some of the fiber easements we had to get. We had some folks who just couldn't stand that we were building this next to them, and they wanted to be a park. And but now they're supporters. So it's just taking a lot of one-on-one time with some folks. But and it's a weird, as you know, there's an election going on right now, so it's a little bit weird around there, and a lot of affiliations popping up. But Brad, the big situation and the reason that forecasting has to do with population growth. So they're forecasting up to 12 million gallons over a decade. So if that happens, that means you're going to have a lot of population growth in the region, a lot of development, and a lot of densification, I think, within the city center to be able to deliver that. So it'll be interesting to see where it goes. So we can only work with what we have guaranteed, and when we look at it from a 5 million gallon perspective, we feel comfortable at 8 million gallons. Would it get to actually 12 million? I'm hopeful. I can't guarantee that, but it'd be great.
Don, you have another question?
Yeah. Well, I did actually. I really appreciate the participation. By the way, I am one of the project co-leads for cooling environments at OCP. I also work for Victaulic, but the focus of these discussions or questions are around participation and advancement of the cooling environments and the sustainability projects associated with OCP. And I was curious as to what perspectives, where areas the industry, and we have another project I mentioned before called Wyoming Hyperscale White Box, which bills itself as I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it's a sustainable hyperscale data center ecosystem. And it seems like this could be a trend, the new trend in data centers, where we're looking at not just the data center, but the community it supports and how it all works together. Are there areas, what are the top areas that you see where collaboration could make you more successful, make the industry more successful at the same time? How can we grow, and how can OCP help? And would you ever want to become a member of OCP?
I'd be happy to be a member. That's an easy part. Our business is very keenly focused on interconnection. That's part of the reason I wanted to make sure everybody understood what we're building for fiber. We stay within a geographic a radius of the internet exchanges. So, connecting to Equinix Filigree Court, connecting to 350 Cermak in Chicago, Infomart in Dallas, and 11 Great Oaks and a couple of other great buildings in Silicon Valley that allow us to support the handoff of eyeball and content traffic. That geographic radius limit based on fiber optic latency very much defines where we're going to locate, and then we try to work very hard to find the Goldilocks spot between existing transmission power, entitlement, available water resources, and the ability for us to build our large scale fiber ring to tether in. Where we really need that support is going to be driving maybe regional authorities in California, Chicago, Dallas, for example, where we're going to support a large-scale deployment instead of, excuse my language here, but a hyperscaler called Ashburn, a giant shit show of an unplanned master plan community. It's a mess, and that's why it's called Data Center Alley, which is really not a very nice term to be called an alley. We're trying to create something that's beautiful and has huge amount of green space and master plan everything ahead of time to make it very simple for people to deploy. So getting support from politically and economically to make that happen is key. And then a big thing that we like to focus on, and we're very proud of, as I alluded to before, is using existing infrastructure. We will always look for brownfield locations. We will do everything we can not to take away agriculture and try and benefit the community in some way in that regard. And putting our money where our mouth is around ESG and sustainability goals. So imagine here if we have, let's call it 3,000 megawatts, and we have and everybody decides to pop in diesels, that'd be 1,500 train engines. You can imagine that wouldn't work so well from a sustainability perspective. So we're really trying to put our money where our mouth is and get that support. And if OCP can help with that, that'd be great.
Yes, we
We
can.
definitely would like, we definitely would like you to participate as a member, because any contribution that you have, any paper that you have, we could then promote as being a OCP member contribution. And potentially, I think there's a great potential here. We can take this offline, but everything you're talking about basically starts with publicity and public awareness. And so politicians get motivated by public awareness. If the public only knows the dark side, the public become that. So anyway, I'd love to have these conversations a little bit more. One of the topics we've often joked about, but maybe would line up with you, is if you put a water park next to your facility, you'd have a huge opportunity for heat reuse, and you'd become very popular in a water park that could operate 365 days a year,
So my team teases me about this. So I'm a surfer. I've been a surfer since I was 12 years old, and I'm 52 now. And I was a competitive surfer, so it's near and dear to my heart, and I still do it regularly. As you know, there's a lot of wave pool technology out there and everything else. And my team, we have a couple of surfers who are actually on the team, but they're constantly teasing me because I bring that up all the time. Hey, we can have a wave pool park and benefit the community in that regard. It's entirely possible. It actually looked, when we looked at this area here, if this Vulcan mine area becomes, it goes away, you can see they already have a pool of water here. We could, if that forms a lake and we can pump hot water into it, and all of a sudden kids are surfing year round, that'd be really cool. So I'm a full supporter.
we can definitely help you out with that. And the political aspect is something that the OCP we have been talking about that for a while, that we need to incorporate that in our discussions, because it is the elephant in the room, whether we like it or not. Anyway, Bruce, you have a question?
Yeah, sure. Josh, this is Bruce Maya with Arup. I've been after Scott and AD and spoken to Olin about how we can support your activities there, and missed out to somebody else to help you with that facility there in Frederick, and it's fascinating. I really appreciate it. I've had previous experience with another project at the University of Delaware 10 years ago with Bob Kreisman of JLL and Gene Kern that never went through because of politics, where a candidate for mayor decided to oppose our 250 megawatt natural gas power plant there supporting a data center, too close to what the local residents wanted to have in the neighborhood. So I appreciate a lot of what you're going through there. Arup has joined Arches in California. I hear you're coming to California. We're working with our data center clients, co-location and hyperscale, to develop a load for a project not unlike what you've put together here, some kind of a central hub that would provide for the production of hydrogen and the distribution of hydrogen, both in the form of electrical power through lines and through pipelines to off-takers, hopefully close to the San Jose airport, so that they can use that for jet fuel as well as facilities operation. And also for data centers, of course, to use for hydrogen generators on site, either fuel cells or turbines. And like our project in Delaware, the turbines are very interesting because of the extraordinary off-heat that they have. And that takes me to my question about, do you have alternatives to absorption chillers? Absorption chillers are, kind of dirty animals, are difficult to maintain. They have a lot of caustic materials in them and a very complex chemical process. But we found in our project in Delaware that taking the off heat from the natural gas turbines and taking them into steam turbines, and then powering electric chillers was possibly more efficient than using absorption chillers. And the extraordinary amount of electricity you get off of those is very interesting.
Yeah, we've looked at that. Here's the issue we have around turbines. They're incredibly efficient, and aviation-based turbines today, and some of the very newest turbines from GE are the big turbines, talking 400 or 500 megawatt kind of class, are almost to 100% hydrogen capable systems. We would never put in a power system unless it's going to be able to get us to a hydrogen economy. With the government's moonshot and getting us to $1 a kilogram or less, if we can achieve that, then it really becomes equitable to put in hydrogen. We think that our hyperscale clients, or the subset of clients, or all of the government entities coming in, all have ESG requirements and goals that would preclude them from burning fossil fuels. So we have got to be able to delve into a hydrogen economy. Here's where we have a problem, is around the public perception side. So our zoning is incredibly broad because we're almost primarily general industrial, which is tremendously wide open for what we want to do. Light industrial would limit us, but general, we could put in a gas turbine plant. But I guarantee you the nice folks that are our neighbors down in Adamstown wouldn't appreciate it. We have a school located right here. We have a lot of farmers around in the community who probably wouldn't like to have gas turbines on our site. So what we've looked at is the potential of linear generators and fuel cells more than anything. We have the luxury of time in that as we start to remove power from the transmission scale grid, and let's say we get to 2.4 gigawatts and we get our full detailed load study out, as we start to look for alternatives, and actually go to some level of production on the site with low or no NOx output and hopefully just burning hydrogen, we're talking about 5 to 8 years out. And I think technology is making giant leaps, and things like turbines might not be necessary, but we'll see. A lot of it's going to be defined about what our clients want, what their goals are, what the neighbors will appreciate, and what we can achieve in that regard.
I appreciate all of that, and do want to point out that my comments were directed now toward new hydrogen turbines, not toward the old natural gas turbines. And we have a lot of faith in everybody's ability to make that happen effectively. It just takes hydrogen to make it work.
Yeah.
But the natural gas turbines ought to be able to take hydrogen fuel and share it with natural gas until we get to the point where it can be 100% hydrogen. And
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's a high blend initiative now for sure. Yeah.
Let me add something to the discussion.
We've had one last comment, and that is we've also had experience designing other campuses. Arup designed the headquarters campus for Apple in Cupertino, all of the engineering for that site. We did it for Walmart. We're doing it in Mountain View for somebody who I can't tell you about, but we've had central plant challenges and facilities challenges at an extraordinary level, and would appreciate an opportunity to chat with you and Scott about some of the things that we've learned about fuels and regulators and getting people to buy into large sources of power generation in the state of California.
Wide open to it. I put my email in the chat. Scott's email is scott@ql.email. We have a little bit of a secret email formula just to try and keep people from spamming us too much, but happy to have a conversation. We're engaged daily with various vendors and providers for power services. I actually encourage all of you to reach out. I'm not bothered by it at all. We actually need really some great minds to help us come up with a perfect solution. It's going to take a big team. It's not just one vendor. It's going to take a lot of folks. So please reach out. Happy to get on a call.
Will do. I appreciate it. And by the way, I like your car.
Thank you.
And Josh, mine is on a great mind, but have you thought about So if you reach 65-ish degrees C heat, at that point you can use that heat to evaporate. So this distill and condensate water. So that gray water that you mentioned before could be actually improved, ameliorated with an evaporation system that could use the heat rejected by your data centers.
Mm-hmm. We've looked at that. Again, it's going to take cooperation from our data center clients, though. So all we can do is put in the pipeline infrastructure and take advantage of the gray water to be able to deliver it to our clients. We've allocated land on the campus for the district cooling plant, but right now it's going to be pipes running right through there with nothing in it until we know people are going to take it. Creating a master plan community means that we need the cooperation of everybody to make it happen. I guarantee you some parties are not going to cooperate, but that's fine. The ones who do might be the guys who are preferred by their clients underneath them because they're showing innovation but I'm excited about what the opportunity is. We just need a lot of people to work on it.
And the other obvious use, of course, is industrial laundries. Since you are in an urban environment, that could be actually pretty good heat reuse opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. And as I said, we're working with Argos on the cement side, so they do need a lot of heat. But we're years away from developing heat. Our first data centers, our first energized transmission substation at 1,000 MVA doesn't go live for another 13 months now. So even then, it's going to take a while for that to ramp up, for people to load it up with servers, for the heat to actually come out of it, and hopefully we can drive that over to the concrete guys and other things, or wave pool. Who knows what?
All right. Thank you, guys. We are actually past the hour. Josh, fantastic presentation, fantastic project. Congratulations. And I mean, you have absolutely all our appreciation and support of the OCP. Really, we should take it offline if you want to see what we can do to support this project. And guys, thank you for joining us, and I'll see you in 2 weeks, I guess.
Hey,
Thanks
Josh,
so much,
before
guys.
you drop off, real quick, would like some art.
This conference will now